fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard you will find to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart.
Hi, Morgan. Hi, Candace.
You can go to extremes with impossible schemes. You can laugh when your dreams fall apart at the seams, and life becomes exciting with each.
I let this go a little bit today. So the intro, Jimmy Durante, Young at Heart, right, plays into our topic today. Welcome everybody to the Ask Our Vet series live from the Earth Animal Studios. Dr. Chris, thank you for joining me. I'm excited today. We have a cool topic today to discuss. We're going to talk about caring for our old souls, right? Taking care of our mature pets. Okay, so just some tips and some other things that, to me, it's always about increasing and continuing the highest quality of life with our older pets. So that's the goal today, to talk about some ways that we can do that. Okay. People checking in early. That's great. Thanks. So Sue, I'll start with a question. So Sue, you had a question about, is it okay to mix raw food and kibble? Yeah, you can, depending, I guess. The question then be what your goal was in a specific, what your pet's needs are, and why you want to feed both. Okay. So it's another question. If you want to take that offline with me, we can talk about it. You can let me know what you're feeding, and I can weigh in on it. All right. Chris at earthanimal.com, KRIS. So feel free to email me, and we could talk about it. All right. Oh, thank you, Earth Animal, for weighing in. Hi, Hope. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, you're welcome. That's okay. She was fine. Yeah, it was a good. I was trying to think of songs to start with today, and I know we did Frank Sinatra, and we're kind of going old school. But I couldn't pass up the Jimmy Durante. I thought it was a cool way to start. We got to get back to some rock next week, but I figured this week it was all right. All right, let's see. Teddy, looking forward to the show today. My old man is turning 19 in a couple months. Oh, that's so cool. Congrats. That's wonderful. That's really neat. All right, let's see. Michael, question. Good afternoon, doctor. Question for you. Mustache has gotten a lot of bumps and growths as he's getting older. How do I know which ones need to get checked out? Any tips on which ones could potentially be something more? Yeah, so that's a great question, Michael. And I think really the answer lies with, if you have, I always say this when I look at an animal, I talk to people about feeling bumps, and as our pets age, it's very common for them to get subcutaneous, growths, right? Or growths on under the skin, on the skin, and various other places. So really, if you see a new growth that hasn't been checked out by your vet, Michael, it's always good to have your veterinarian feel them. There's basically, there's very common benign growths that can grow on dogs, lipomas, which are just a overgrowth of normal fat cells. Okay, it's probably the most common growth that I palpate, okay, and feel. And veterinarians are very used to feeling those. But I do tell people all the time that you can't be 100% sure by feeling something. You can have a very highly educated guess on things, but sometimes you have to do things like needle aspirates of things to get some cells, or talk about removing some. But that's an excellent question, and I think it's really, that's something for your veterinarian to look at. If you see a new growth or one that hasn't checked out, it's always good to have it checked out. Best case scenario, they feel it or they aspirate it, it's a lipoma, and no big deal, and you're watching it, or if it's not really growing and small. All right, great question. I know, Candace. So Bronson is excited about the segment since he's turning 16. He loves his Earth Animal humans. Yeah. Bronson's awesome, and congrats. What's his birthday, Candace? When is that? You can just weigh in on that too. All right, just a couple things. We'll start off, and then we'll get back to questions, and we'll start talking about some tips. So we always start out talking a little bit of COVID, since this show was kind of born out of our pandemic. We in Connecticut continue to remain low. We've seen a little bit, I guess, nationally. Every week I kind of, look at the COVID tracker and do some research into certain areas. And so I think nationally, we've had the first spike or first rise since mid-July. It's steadily been declining. And that's obviously with the advent of going back to school and people back to schools, back to colleges. We expected that to a degree. And the hope is, if we're practicing all the social distancing and the mask wearing and some remote classes and whatever else that state by state they're doing, depending on their levels, the hope is we can mitigate that and not have that really start to climb again. So that's our hope, and it just remains to be seen. These are basically, this information kind of changes on 2-week intervals, right? So the hope is that that's going to, we can just mitigate that rise. All right, let's see. All right, Candace, so how can I care safely for Bronson's teeth? Well, first of all, obviously brushing, like we've talked about, if you've been doing that, and if they're used to it and you've been doing it, that slows progression of dental tartar. Things that they like to chew on, any sort of chew toy that they chew that actually, that goes up and down the teeth will help with tartar buildup and slowing that, all right? And then obviously having them checked at your veterinarian. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today is, healthcare regimens. It's actually how we're going to start, but we'll get there in a little bit. March 30th, very cool, Candace. So Teddy says, maybe you can talk about diet for a senior. Raw doesn't agree with mine. He's currently eating Honest Kitchen pate, but has lost a half a pound and only weighs 6.5. Okay, yeah, we're actually gonna talk about diet. And while we're not going to talk specific diets, we're going to talk types of diets and what we look for in our diets for the seniors. Hi, Kirsten. Thanks for tuning in. Hi, Debbie. I mentioned a few weeks ago that my 9-year-old had a large lump under his arm. It was removed 2 weeks ago and not cancer. Fantastic. That's great, Debbie. That's good news. Oh, you're very welcome, and that's great to hear. Always good to hear. All right. Well, we'll let some more questions come in. Let's start talking about caring for our old souls. But before we do that, I want to talk about my Earth Animal of the Week. Okay. So my Earth Animal of the Week this week is Daisy. You've probably seen Daisy's picture behind me on the shelf. Okay. Daisy is owned by my coworker and friend at Earth Animal, Catherine or Kitty. Daisy was adopted in 2005, I think 15 years ago, after Katrina from Arkansas. And, one of the things I often think about that's really changed with this during this epidemic is seeing your coworkers that you're used to seeing every day. And at Earth Animal, it's not just seeing your coworkers, it's seeing your coworkers and all their animals. Okay. And that's something that I really miss, because with Daisy was here all the time and always came to greet you when you came in, and just a really, really good soul and kind soul. And, when we were talking about mature pets, Bronson, Daisy, we have several at Earth come to mind. So I think, and you just miss seeing them, miss seeing the people and you miss seeing their animals. So, Daisy's been with Kitty for 15 years now, and just couldn't be in a better home and couldn't give back more love than she does. So she's super cool, and she's our Earth Animal of the Week. Hi, Martha. Thanks for watching. Hi, Dr. Stephanie. Thank you. Yeah, Kirsten is another one of our coworkers, and it's just I've seen intermittently seen people in intermittent, but just to have that cohesive office with all the animals running around. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Especially for a company like this, that's just so I do miss that very much, very much. Hey, Johnny, thank you for tuning in. All right, let's start here. Let's talk about, one of I think veterinary medicine is unique to me, and it's really unlike any other medicine, human or any other medicine in the world, because we have the ability, and with me, it's, fortunately for me, this has happened a lot, where I've been doing this 25 years now, and I get to take care of many of my patients from the time that they're little, puppies and kittens, to all the way through their entire lives. And, it's an amazing thing for me to be able to know these animals through their whole life and know their families. And they start and they have little kids, and then they're grown up. And as the pet grows, you get to, so you take, you're their pediatrician, and then you're their geriatrician, right? And you take them through their entire life. I think that's one of the coolest things for me about my job, is that I get to do that. And I mean, some of them I actually delivered. So I delivered them, and all the way up into their mature years. So to me, that's probably one of the coolest and best parts of my job. And each stage has its own challenges, right? From the puppy time, when they're chewing everything and you're trying to house break them and they're getting into things, and those are it's kind of like when your children, when they become toddlers and you're waiting for them to walk, and they start to walk, and now they're going at the plugs and they're doing everything. It's the same thing, and you have to puppy-proof the house, and then they get into their middle years, and then the challenges are unique all the way through. And so during their mature years, okay, that's where that has its own set of challenges, right? On various levels. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss, kind of just some tips on how I think we can make it their lives, just improve their lives and give them the longest, highest quality life that we can, because to me, that's what it's all about. Hi, Eve. Thank you for checking in. I miss you too. I was just talking about you the other day, Eve. I'd love to see you soon. I hope you're doing well. Hi, Miss Bruno. Elizabeth has seen the show over in Britain. Well, that's cool. That's cool. Hi, Karen. Thank you for tuning in, Miss Bruno. So first, number one, let's talk about a healthcare regimen, right? Typically, when animals are young, not puppies, they're into the veterinarian more when they're first, when you first get them. But as they get on, and for most of their lives, their healthcare regimen is typically an annual visit to the veterinarian, right? And they go in and whatever they need, they have their health exam and whatever else they need. And so typically that's a 1-year thing. What we do want to do as our pets become, as our pets age, what we do want to do is we should step that up to at least twice a year, and sometimes more frequently, every 3 or 4 months if they're with some of the older ones, or they have some conditions that we need to check things. So, but initially, when they're starting to get mature, twice a year is what I recommend. We want to step up their healthcare regimen, right? The other thing too is, part of that is really working on preventative restorative medicine, as opposed to just, we want to adjust things like vaccination protocols, okay? Certainly need to be adjusted and discussed with your veterinarian, especially, in our mature pets, okay? I'm a firm believer in running blood profiles twice a year, blood and urine. The goal of that is to identify any potential problems early, so that they can be dealt with. And so it's always better to catch something early, right, than it is to catch it down the road. And remember that, pets are really tough. Okay, and a lot of times they don't show things that are bothering them until they're more advanced. So I think doing this, preventative medicine is really important. I think that's really important because we can find things on these blood profiles. Having those twice yearly or more exams and doing these, you can find more things that you just can't find on the exams with the blood. So the exams coupled with the blood are really, really important. Oh, right. She's in Cyprus. Yes. Thanks, Patty. Hi, Tammy. Let's see. Hope this is not a silly question, but do you believe that our animals know they are aging? Obviously not in a way humans do, but do you feel they get depressed or sad as they slow down? Tammy, that's not a silly question at all. And I think it's more with them. I think it's more of that they go through changes as they get older, right? So they may not, feel as spry, or they've got arthritis, so that, so I think they know that they're aging in the sense that they can feel the changes that go through their body. Okay. And I do think, and part of this is, I always say, nobody humanizes pets probably more than I do. I mean, as I go on, I see such mirror images with people and animals and conditions, and even more, I think over the last several years we've been focusing a lot more on the mental health of our pets too, because I think that's important. And we're gonna talk more about that as we get on a little bit in the show. All right. That is not a silly question. That's a good question, Tammy. Thank you. Let's see, Jill. Hi, Chris. I've been worried about this since COVID. Our 15-year-old Pancakes is doing okay these days, but she's got her ups and downs. What if we have to say goodbye to her during this COVID time and we're not allowed into the clinic? Well, hopefully this is not something we're talking about for a while, Jill, but I will tell you that during COVID, the only time that right now, because we're curbside, but the only time that we're allowing people to come in is during euthanasias, okay? Because and everyone wears masks, and we take all the precautions, but it's I think it's very important to be able during a time like that to be able to be with your pet. So please don't worry about that. And like I said, hopefully we're not talking about that for a long time. All right. All right, so anyway, first one, stepping up healthcare regimen, right? Important. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about dietary considerations. And so the next couple all tie into one another, but I kind of broke them into, we're going to talk about diet, we're going to talk about weight management and activity, okay? So, like I was saying before, and when you look at, aging pets, they very much mimic aging people. They get very similar conditions. They start to lose, their senses aren't as sharp. The mind is not as sharp. Arthritis, things like that. So there's some things that we can do to slow those things, and there's also things that we can do to help. Knowing that there's an inevitability of getting arthritis, say, in our aging pets, but we want to be able to do things that don't enhance it or speed it up or cause more discomfort on the joints, right? So first thing, let's talk about diet. Generally, no matter what, our aging pets, both dogs and cats, will slow down. They will sleep more. So there's this curve, right? They sleep a lot as puppies, and then they become through their life more active as they grow up, and then they're more active, and then they start to go back to sleeping more and laying around more. So typically, our older pets are not burning as much calories as our younger pets, right? So most of the dietary considerations and the foods that we want to feed mature pets generally are a bit lower in calorie, okay? They generally also are higher fiber, which can help continue to, help their stools and also help maintain weight, okay? One of the things that a lot of older people, older pets have a trouble with is that they don't digest as well as they used to, right? So we want these foods to be easily digestible, okay? And again, like we've stressed every time, all these animals are individuals. So it's something that you want to talk to your veterinarian about. You want to talk to your independent retailer who you visit. And the wealth of knowledge that the people in the independent retailer, that sector about foods is unbelievable. And you want to tap into that because that's what they do. They know these foods in and out. They match up foods with, again, size, age, breed, every condition specific. So you want to tap into that because it's important. Because again, breed, weight, specific other disease processes, those are all things that we have to consider when we're picking a food at that point. So I think those are some tips as far as dietary. And again, I don't believe that there's one specific type of diet that goes across the board for large breed dogs or small. I think you have to take them as individuals, and I think there's merit to all the different forms of diets. I think just specifically what works best for your specific animal and case, right? All right, some more people have checked in. Let's see. Yeah, Helen, that is a point. There are also veterinarians there's some mobile services that are coming for that as well. So that's a good point. All right, Kirsten, so speak about introducing a younger cat into the family of a senior. All right, I will get to that, and I won't forget, I promise. All right, Jill. So, all right, let's talk about our next point. Weight management, obviously key at all stages, but very key in our mature animals, okay? In our geriatrics. It's extremely important. Why? Well, one, weight affects organ health. It affects really the entire health of the body. So if they're carrying extra weight, it certainly adversely affect them. But just as importantly, all of our joints, people and animals, are a function of the weight that's on them, okay? And so we know that they're going to have a level of arthritis. We know that the heavier they are for their build, the harder that's going to be on those joints. So it just makes it easier, and you can get in these vicious cycles where they don't want to move as much because they're heavy and it hurts their joints, and then if they don't move, then they gain more weight. And so I think it's real weight management is really important. And it's always the question about how do you know if your animal is overweight. Well, I think, again, you can talk to your veterinarian. I think by rule, when you look at your animal, you want them to always maintain a waist, okay? So you want rib coverage, okay? But when they come to the back, when they come to their waist before their hips, they should have a waist. They should have a waist. So if they're straight down or they're out, then they're carrying too much weight. And sometimes you have to remember too, depending on the size of the animal, oftentimes it's not a lot of actual weight that we have to take off them to get them to ideal weight. Okay, and again, something that you should talk to your veterinarian about because they can tell you, they can give you kind of a ballpark and help you with that. But again, when we're talking about diet with the fiber and the lower calorie, a lot of times that helps as well. Now, this is why I was talking about all these things tying in with one another, right? So we talked about dietary considerations, we talked about weight management, okay? And the two things that really play into weight management are diet and what else? Activity, okay? I talk to people all the time. Here, we'll get to a couple questions and then we'll go into activity. All right, Hope, our service had Doggy senility in her later days. Would find herself in a corner of the room and wouldn't know how to turn around to get herself out. Hard to watch the decline of our girl. Hope, it always is. And yes, and actually we are going to talk about, I'm actually just a couple minutes away from talking about that. It is something that we are paying much more attention to in the veterinary community, is this cognitive dysfunction, right? Senility, dementia, if you will. And it's something that when I got out of vet school, no one talked about it. Okay, but as time went on, they were doing studies, and they really, we pay a lot more attention to the mental acuity of our pets now, and I think that's a really good thing. All right. Barbara, my dog is younger, a 4-year-old golden doodle who does agility. Do you think agility is something a dog can do even when he or she is older? Absolutely, Barbara. I think, and that goes back to, they're all individuals, right? You, as they age, you may not, there's certain things maybe that they can't do, or certainly as well. But I think keeping them, if they're used to doing it, and they're first of all, it keeps them fit, it keeps them mentally acute. So absolutely, I think as time goes on, you continue, and you may have to curtail it a little bit, obviously, as they age, because they get more sore afterwards or things like that. But I think, no, if it's something they do a lot, I think you continue to do it, and you just adjust as you see how they react to it. So good question, but yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about activity. It is extremely important for our older pets to keep them moving, all right, keep them active, all right, for a number of reasons. And everybody, oftentimes my clients ask me, they'll say, well, what's the right amount? And again, going back to this, them as individuals, going back to them being individuals, they really, it's not one plan for everyone, okay? It's depending on what they're used to. It's depending on what they like to do, what you've done with them in the past. And I think, but the key to me is not when they're older, I like them to have daily moderate exercise, okay? And depending on how old they are, that moderate could go to mild. But it's what I stress to people is you need to keep them moving on a daily basis, okay? So what is not beneficial to an older dog that has some level of arthritis or some other things is to skip a couple days and then go out and throw a ball in the backyard, okay? It's kind of like me playing softball now, and then I can't walk the next day. It's basically, you want this to be an everyday event. It just keeps their muscles warm. It just helps their joints. It helps lubricate their joints to move. So that really, to me, is key. And then people say, well, how much? And it really depends on them. You have to watch them. Some dogs push themselves too hard, and you have to curtail it. But others give you clues. They give you clues on walks that they may, I think I want to go back home. But it really is just getting them, whatever that level that you see is right for them. It's doing that on a daily basis. It helps with their mind. It helps with weight. And it really, really does help with their joints and their muscles. All right. Also, I think under activity comes exercising their brains, all right? And this is hope, where we're going to talk about cognitive dysfunction, all right? It is estimated that, and they've done some research on this, that 100% of dogs that are 12 and over have some level of dementia, cognitive dysfunction, all right? It may not be perceivable, because remember that it's because humans, we speak and we function on a higher cognitive level. It's easier to detect earlier in people, but really you can start to see small signs when it starts. But the fact is, they do estimate that at least close to 100% have some level of it. And we all who have had geriatric pets and mature pets, we've all seen the signs of it. Like, Hope, you were talking about this. They'll go in a room or in a corner and they couldn't. My 13-year-old dog, Monty, had an episode like that just last weekend, where he had gone in the corner of our yard where the fences meet, and he was there and he was looking side to side, and he could not figure out how to, where to go or how to get him out of it. And, it's hard to watch, and I agree. And we just had to go over and call him and just kind of redirect him. Okay. He's done things like, instead of going, we have a closet near our back door, and he'll go and kind of bark at the closet thinking that's the door to go outside, so I can really see it in him. But they all have again, they're individuals. They all have different levels. Some you can't perceive it until they're very advanced in age. Some you can see it younger. Okay, but when I say exercising their brains, I mean play with them, throw a ball to them. I think all those things help them. It's like them doing the daily word jumble, right? or just something to stimulate their thinking, their minds, playing with them. I think that helps. And you have to remember what happens as they age too is as they age, they start to lose senses, right? Their sense of smell isn't as good. Their sense of sight is not as good. And you couple that together with cognition issues, and they feed one another. So it does add to their confusion, and it also adds to and I believe this, why we see anxiety start to ramp up. We see, I don't know if anybody listening has had the experience of having an older dog pace at night, and sometimes, get up in the middle of the night and pace, or just not settle down, or when it starts, almost like sundowning, right? When it starts to get, because it's, and I believe this is a combination of mind and also just, they can't see as well. It's dark. They don't, they may wake up and be a little confused of where they are. So I think that's something that, if you've had a pet that's gotten to an advanced age, almost all of us have had seen that in some, varying degree. Teddy, yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. It is something that we see. So again, I think it's very important to keep them stimulated and keep them moving. All right, every day keep them moving. And sometimes they may not want to go, and it doesn't have to be for long, but just to get them up and going. Because you'll notice that almost always they're more stiff after laying down. So it's like heavy exercise, or they overdo it one day, they're more stiff. But also when they've been laying down for a while, because their joints stiffen up, right? All right. So our last topic, kind of in this, is talking about supplements. All right. So what can we do to help our older guys live a higher quality of life, slow progression of things like arthritis, and just generally increase the quality of their life, all right? So first thing is, I believe in some level that all of them should be on a good joint supplement, okay? It's something that you can start early. You don't have to start it you don't have to start a joint supplement when you see an animal having a hard time getting around. That, frankly, they work better if you start them a little earlier. And so, and again, people say, well, what age? And this is another question that I get all the time, which is, well, what age is my pet considered a senior? Okay. And you know what? There's a million ages that people throw out there, and they're all really, frankly, they're all different. Obviously, a large breed dog is going to be considered a senior younger than the smaller breeds, because they tend to, their lifespans are generally different. So it is individual. Some animals slow down a little earlier than others. Giant breeds even younger. But to get them on, to get them on a joint supplement when they're younger can help slow progression. Okay, so I think that's good. I think oftentimes too, as they get older, things like their coats tend to dry out more. They don't produce as much sebum in their sebaceous glands. So things like a fatty acid supplement helps skin and coat and mind and everything. Get omegas, the really good form. So I think a good fatty acid supplement, Earth Animal Health Nuggets, things like that. Just some supplements to help them help themselves. Okay. And then obviously for whatever you're going to the veterinarian more frequently, you're doing blood, you're looking at their kidneys and their liver and all those things. And so then you want to use condition specific supplements. Okay. The other thing that people are using and again, we said the anxieties of, the other thing that we're seeing out there is people are using CBD more for things like arthritises, anxieties, and seems to have some pretty good efficacy for both, right? So that's another thing naturally that people have been using, and I've certainly seen in a lot of my patients that come in that people are using it, that they have seen good results. So those are all possibilities, right? And then again, some animals will ramp up anxiety-wise, and I think the reason why, in the veterinary community, that we've paid more and more attention to mental, anxieties and the mental aspect is because certainly, anxieties and cognition anxieties can definitely play a role. Hi, Geraldine. Definitely play a role in their quality of life. So it's not only physically, it's mentally. So I think it's really important that we pay attention to that, right? All right, I've got some questions I got to get in here. I'm going to lose some. So Helen says, my 2 Chihuahuas are chewing holes in their dog beds. What are the healthiest things for them to chew on? So Helen, I mean, certainly I love the Earth Animal No Hides. My dogs absolutely love them. I think they're highly digestible. I think the dogs really like them. It does help, it helps. It's going to help to some degree with their teeth as well. So I think it's something to consider. I think it's a really good choice. Remember a couple things with chew toys that we've talked about in the past with chews. Never, always pick the right size. Know your chewers. Some dogs are really vigorous chewers. So always pick the right size. And on top of that, you always want to observe them with chew toys. You never want to leave them alone. Okay, very important. All right, let's see. Helen, I wouldn't consider a 7-year-old Chihuahua a senior. Chihuahuas, again, it's small breeds. That's kind of, they're kind of midlife at that point. You would consider them. A couple years down the road, we start to talk about it, but generally, and again, your veterinarian could look at them and depending on the changes that they see, okay, but not necessarily. All right, so this is a good question, Teddy, and I'll do my best to define it, okay? So Teddy asked, define quality of life. I say this because people say that my dog has no quality of life because he sleeps most of the time, but I can say when I take him out, he loves it. Okay, so here's my take on quality of life. To me, first of all, geriatric animals, we just said it, are going to sleep. There's this full circle thing, right? With humans too. You sleep a lot as babies and you sleep a lot in your mature years, okay? It's because you need it. So certainly if an animal's sleeping a lot, I don't put that in a poor quality of life category, okay? What affects things like quality of life? Okay, well, with quality of life, we want to look for our pets to be able, obviously, to be mobile, right? To be eating, to look happy, okay? We want them to be interactive, okay? And stuff like that is, things like that are important, okay? We want to know that they can do the basics, that they don't have to struggle supremely just to do their basic needs, okay? I think that's when you start to discuss, that's when you talk about quality of life. When they are really, really stressed to just do the basic things that they need to do, to basically live. That's I think when you start to talk about a diminished quality of life, okay? And look, dogs, cats, as they age, they will have better days and other days. They'll have some great days, some not so great days, and that's a normal cycle. But when they start to not have better days and they start to string multiple poor days together, again, that you would define as diminished quality of life. So there's not one, I think. The AVMA has some scales where they say they do 0 to 10 and they talk about, their hunger, are they hurting, are they, but I really do think it's looking at them and knowing knowing that they're happy, knowing that they're able to perform the basics, and I think that's really important. Thanks, Gretchen. Yeah, it does. I do. The pen does help. I totally agree with you. All right, Candace, let's see. Since Bronson can't hear anymore and can't see very well out of one eye, he's constantly making sure I am within sight. Even if I go downstairs to do laundry, he doesn't want me to go. And then I bring him and he can't see the steps. Breaks my heart. It is. And look, there's no, I always talk about this with a heavy heart because, it's tough. It's tough to watch them age, and one of the hardest things about, even if our pets live, these long lives, longer than their life expectancy, they're still short. They're still not long enough. The oldest dog that I've personally ever had was 17. It was an adopted poodle that I had. It was 17, and I wish they could live turtle lifespans, right? We all do, because it's just never long enough. But I think the key is we want them to be able, they're certainly going to lose some of their faculties. They're going to not be as sharp hearing wise and vision wise and everything else. But again, the key is we just want to support them through the process. And yes, some days are better than others. And sometimes, some of this stuff is hard. It's not easy. Believe me, I've been there. Oh, good. Thank you. Thanks for the support. I think the no hides are a great product. Helen, that's a good question as far as bully sticks. And yeah, I mean, certainly there's a lot of animals that chew on bully sticks. What I do like, again, about the no hides is their digestibility, okay? They are highly digestible, where a lot of other raw hides and other things are not nearly as digestible. So that's why I mentioned it. Oh, you're welcome, Jill, and that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Just a couple more things, and then we'll get back to the questions. So just a couple more things that we want to talk about. I think, again, you want to look into some natural anti-anxieties if you see that your pet, CBD, like I said, we've been seeing some really good reports with that, so it does work for a lot of animals. Natural remedies, again, someone had mentioned that earlier, like the calmness, things like that. So I think that you want to support the mind as well, right? Last thing, second to last thing, a couple more. Adjustments to the environment, also key. All right. What we do want to do is support them, knowing that they have a harder time with things like again, stairs. When they're small, like Bronson, you can carry them. If you have larger dogs, you want to get ramps for the home, ramps for the car. And again, when you start to see them slowing down on the steps, it's a good time to get the ramps, because you can train them to use them when they're not so having such a hard time. Okay, so I think those are important. Something we do in my house is getting more beds for them to be around, because one of the things is, if they're in different rooms, it's good to have padded beds, because if they're spending more time laying down on hard floors, they can tend to one, to bother their joints more, and two, they can tend to get more callus formation, and sometimes that can bother them. So I think more beds. The other thing is you want to make sure that one of the key things I tell people too is, when you notice that your animal has some vision issues, okay, don't rearrange the furniture in your house. So if you can help it, you don't want to change layouts, because oftentimes their sight is worse than you actually know. I've had people that come in that have had older pets, got new furniture, changed it, and all of a sudden the dog was walking into the furniture, and they came in and the dog had no vision at all, and they had no idea, because the dog had lost it slowly and had completely memorized the layout. And it was only then when they noticed it. So one of the things, like I said, is it's try not to do that because they get used to that environment. So in that sense, I would, in that sense, I would try not to do that if you can. Okay. And the last thing goes without saying, right? Love and attention. As much as you can. It's great for them to get it. It does make them feel better, and it also gives back to you. I mean, what's better than hanging out with them next to you or on your lap and just, it's about as good for their and your anxiety as it gets, right? So definitely recommend that. All right, let's see. Geraldine, my Bichon Chipper was 16.5 when he went over the Rainbow Bridge last October. The Zen pen helped so much, but he finally let me know it was time. He lived a great life and loved no hides too. Jaron, thanks for sharing that. I think, and I'm glad the Zen pen helped. I think, yeah. The other thing that's always hard to talk about is that, right? And, I think while this topic is talking about them living their best life, I think, certainly it goes without saying that the hardest part of my job is euthanasia by far. And you never get used to it, right? But people do ask me often, how do you know? How do you know when it's time? And it sounds like a cop-out to say but it's not. They do let you know. I'm a firm believer in it when they're really, really having a hard time and they get I think their look changes, their eyes change, and I think when you are connected to your pet, I do think that I do. I firmly believe that. So, all right. Is freeze-dried goat milk from Earth Animal good? Yes, it is. There is a ton of nutrients in goat milk. And so, yes, it is, Barbara. Oh, you're welcome, Gretchen. Rob, so no widespread comments widespread panic comments this week, Rob. But anyway, yes, it does work. Works on everybody, right? It's something we all need. All right, let's do our. I know this is sometimes a tough subject to talk about. I'm right now, like a lot of you, have a geriatric dog with several health problems, and so I just think hopefully some of these tips help. I think not a lot of hard things to do, but I think if you do them take them as a whole, I think they can really benefit the animals' lives. And again, can't forget the cats here, right? Can't forget the playing with the cats and stimulating the cats. A lot of times the things that we see on dogs where we talk about cognition and we talk about arthritis and we talk about all these things, and you don't always think about it as much in cats. One, they typically get it older, okay? And two, you don't always recognize it as much as you do in dogs, but they do get it. They do get cognition issues. They do get arthritis. So, a lot of these things apply to the cats as well. Playing with your cat and stimulating your cat every day, mentally is a really good thing to do. So can't forget the cats in this at all. All right, so let's do our quiz question. All right. So earlier we talked about our Earth Animal Day. We talked about Daisy. Okay. And so Daisy was adopted from what state? So we mentioned the state where she was adopted from. I'll give you a hint. And obviously, Catherine, you can't answer this, right? You're not eligible for this. So this is for a $100 gift certificate to your favorite retailer, okay? I'll give you a hint. Let's see if anybody remembers, and if not, I'll give you a hint. Razorbacks is the hint. Razorbacks. Good guess. There you go, Teddy, you won. Arkansas. Good job, Teddy. You just came in right before Stephanie. So good try, everybody. And yet, Sue, it was after Katrina, but it was from Arkansas. And actually, she's also named after Daisy State Park in Arkansas. So, A little more trivia. Anyway. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for today. I think, again, a good subject. Let's talk about next week. I'm really, really excited. Next week, we're going to do wisdom, Earth Animals New Food, and I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm going to tell you why I think it is absolutely spectacular. All right? So we'll talk wisdom food next week. I hope everyone has a great, great weekend. All right? Oh, Kirsten, I almost forgot. I have to get this in really quickly because you're going to yell at me for forgetting your question. I didn't forget it. All right. So, last thing. Kirsten had asked how you bring in a kitten with a geriatric cat. And just quickly, the easiest thing, obviously, usually it's easier with kittens than adult cats, okay? Because, kittens for the most part aren't threatening. The one problem with the kittens oftentimes is they're too much, all they want to do is keep going to your older cat. So I always believe in introducing them slowly, having them in the room, you're there, not leaving them alone together at first, seeing what your cat's reaction. Generally, the cats initially are pretty appalled at the idea, right? But most of them do get to the point of at least accepting them into the house, okay? So it really is just in slow increments, and then keeping them separated at first, when you're not there, is really important because, you don't want, if there's, God forbid, a fight or something else, you don't want that to happen certainly when you're not there. So I think it's slow. It's keeping them separated. And generally with cats, I think usually, dogs with puppies oftentimes are more, quicker to come around, but I think usually it's a few weeks. I find with most of them, and then they finally say, okay, well, I guess this little one's not leaving. So, all right. Hope that helps, and we can talk more about that offline. All right, Kirsten. Thank you, Miss Bruno. Thank you for watching. Everybody's saying thank you, everybody. Again, I really I enjoy doing this. I enjoy the questions and the back and forth. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And yes, we do this, Helen. We do this same time every Thursday at 4 o'clock. Everyone's going to want to tune in. Everybody's going to want to tune in next week. I think you're going to be really impressed with this food. I have one of my dogs on it now, and he's doing wonderfully, and I can't wait to talk to you about it. So please tune in next week. And I thought today we'd go out with a little Beatles. All right, turn on the stereo here. Here we go.